All right, this is like my fourth time recording this. Let's see if this. Let's see if it's a bit smoother this time. Welcome to my channel. I go by the name Metamorpheus. You can also call me Harry, and I'm here to share research into the topic of alchemical marriage or unification of the soul, body, and spirit, as well as how that connects to symbology and mythological correspondences. Been working on this subject for about 4 years now, and most of that has just been personal notes. It got to a point where I realized a lot of this stuff I wouldn't really be able to share with a lot of people, just because the deeper you go into the symbology, the less relatable that you become to the common man, I guess. And I just decided about 2 years into it that I wouldn't bother recording evidence anymore, trying to convince other people, and that I would just try to dive deeper into it without even considering the idea that I would need to share it with anyone again. And doing that really helped in a big way, because previously, every time I would connect a new insight together, I would do it through the frame that, as soon as I had it, I was thinking about, how do I explain this to other people? And I would do that pretty much every time, until I realized there was a missing experiential context. So the explanation that I was providing was being filtered through their own lens, which didn't have any context to assign the same meaning to that information. And so, one aspect of being human is that we want to be understood. But the reality of that is that we can't really be understood, at least, especially, using a language that has so many different meanings to each word. And that's beautiful in a way, if you can accept that. And so over the last, about at least the last year and a half, there's kind of been that disconnection from the process of trying to explain myself, or trying to leave a paper trail. And if you look at my notes now, they're almost schizophrenic, because I'm just putting words together that in my mind are correspondent. But if you were to just read that as a normal person, you would just see all these strings of random words, and you'd think he's a lunatic, basically. And you would be right to think that. Because the meaning of all those words is operating, for me at least, under a completely different framework. And so that's kind of why I'm talking to you today, is that I've recently shared a post, and to me the post is fully logical, But when I read it from someone else's perspective, it would be very difficult to make sense of any of it. So I figured I would record myself going through the post, and I'll be able to kind of expand a little bit on it. But before I did that, I kind of just wanted to provide a little introduction, because what you're about to see or read is written from a person who does not need to justify to other people how I got there. And because of that, I don't operate under the normal rule set that most people operate. And when it comes to language and the meaning of language and linguistics in general, most people operate within a framework and stay within that framework when it comes to, the history of words. The scholarly kind of approach is quite linear. And as a result, they don't really allow jumping between languages or meanings. But the way my mind operates is that it's more like water. And so I jump and swim around and have sex with all of the meanings. Think of it like the Tower of Babel story, where there was one language. And if you can think about language, it's just patterns of meaning. And so there was we can think of it as a shared meaning structure. And that shared meaning structure was broken up across the different languages. And so when you think about all of the different languages today, each of them have very similar words, but they don't all share the same meaning. But if we were thinking universally, all of those meanings together would represent the one meaning structure. But each language and their separate meanings has broken up the meaning structure. So meaning is different depending on the language that you're using or the region that you're growing up in. And so the way I think about things is I recombine those meaning structures again, unifying them. And as a result, it's almost repairing the separation that was, symbolic of the Tower of Babel story. All right. So with that said, I'll share my screen, but there's definitely a couple of other things I just want to talk about as well. Let me just figure this out. What I got screen. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen if I can work this out. Probably should have got water before I started this. So I might have to grab that soon. Okay. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, great. So this is my first undrafted post. It's called the Alchemical Code, embedded within the English alphabet order. And then it's got abracadabra. And And before I get started on this, I just want to talk about the overarching parody that gets replayed throughout mythology and religion. And it has many different names and many different faces, and overall it has a lot of variation within the details depending on which story you're listening to. But overall, it's the same story being told over and over again. And that story is the story of the mother, the father, and the child. That's the trinity. The story begins with a separation of the father from the mother. And this story is encapsulated thematically with a castration or a severed penis. And you can tell that this story, or these stories, were told by a child because they're hilarious and they contain, crude jokes. Only a child would really tell generally. So you can tell the nature of these stories is also almost like a game, like a play. So although they're capturing, the very essence of what we would define as existence or reality, they're done through the lens of comedy / tragedy and a game. And it's structured in a way that's the only way you can work it out is if you think like a child. Because if you think like an adult, you're just not going to have the flexibility to be able to see the simplicity of it. But it's very simple. It's the story of a circle and a line and a dot. And the circle is representing the mother. The line represents the father. And the dot represents the child. But the mother isn't just representing a feminine principle. It's representing the objective ground of what we call observable existence. And the father represents the light and animating force of that existence. And the child represents the seed that is created from their union. But that story is an analogy for, well, it's not actually a story. It's a metaphor for our actual observable reality. So if we think of the story is the description of what we can observe. And so what's not important is if the story isn't where we find the truth. The truth is what it's pointing to, which is the very thing that we are, and what we're observing in a way is that very thing. So when we talk about the mother, we're talking about the very field or area that produces that encapsulates our reality, that receives the light. Now the problem with this story is that it starts with the father being disconnected, and he's not there. Not there in the sense of not there in our awareness. So it's almost like it's always present there, but there's a cable that would enable us to see that presence. It's disconnected. That's how everyone starts the game. And so we start with the mother without the balancing masculine force. So Sheila's living in this dark chaos. And the seed of that chaos is what we call our observable world. Us. It's us. We are the seed, so we're the child. But we're the bastard child. The bastard child without the father. So we're incomplete in a way, at least as far as we're aware. Okay. So that unaware child is ignorant, basically. It's his ignorance, it's his darkness. And so at that point, the child is unaware that there is a father, that there is a greater reality. So he thinks that the material world is all that there is. And as a result, he is subject to death and is in time. He doesn't realize there's a timeless father, you know. So he's stuck in time. He's on the cross of time and space. So he's in the space of the mother, which is the symbol of the soul, which is a symbol of, it's a circle. She's the circle. Everything in the circle is what we call existence. She's the area. Now in mythology, that area, well, Rhea is the name of Saturn's wife. Saturn's the god of time. So Rhea, or Maria, Mary, is the soul, or the soil, right? It's the soil for the seed. And so because she's beginning in the darkness, she's the black soil, it's the black soil. But what she produces is like a reflection. So our world, our material, is like it starts as just a reflection. of her unbalanced seed. So that's why it's associated with Saturn, right? It's talking about this child that's disconnected from the father, because in the mythology, Set cuts up his brother Osiris, and they recover all the parts except for his penis. And in the Greek or Roman mythology, Saturn castrates his father Uranus. So it's just saying that in the very beginning of the story is the disconnection from the sky, the father, the spirit, the spear, the masculine, the phallus. So it's showing that there's the feminine eye, which is a circle or a soul. There's the masculine eye, which is a pole or a line. And because those are disconnected, it produces this child, Satan, the like, lives in chaos and disorder. But what happens is in that story, in the alchemical operation, the father comes back into the picture, essentially. And so that is like the dove coming down and entering Mary, the spirit coming down and entering Mary, right? And in that dark soil, dark soul of the womb, the light of the spirit enters and is the fertile seed. And it enters through that point, that point in the middle of the soul, the seed. It comes through there. So it comes through the child. It enters through the child. And it's a marriage. So the bird comes for the bride, and this wedding enables the spirit, the spear, the masculine spear, to spear the sphere, spear the seed into the black soil, a fertile seed, and through that child is reborn through the spirit. And so it goes from a sunset to a sunrise. So who rises, in the Egyptian myth, it's Horus, who rise. And in the Christian story, it's Jesus, the sun rises, the Son of Man. So these stories they're symbols for you. It's for what your reality, what my reality is. Each of us have the soul generating everything that we see. And when that soul hasn't been penetrated by the father, right, then it's stuck in this like matrix, closed off matrix. And as an overcompensation from that, you can see in our society, we live in a patriarchy, but that's really just a toxic patriarchy because there's no father in the picture. And so it's the mother pretending to be the father. She's not good at that role, she's not meant for that, to do everything. And so that's how things are so unbalanced in our world as a result of that. But the balancing happens within man, through the child. So each of us are that child, that seed. And so in order for our world to be repaired, we each need to be repaired. We each need to reconnect to that, back to the spirit, which is outside of time, outside of the cross. So we need to die on the cross, which is die in time. This entity that we think we are is within time, right? So because that's a separate entity that can't coexist with the timeless Father. So in a way, for you to receive, as the child, for you to receive the Father, the version of you that is in time needs to be sacrificed, essentially, because that is the false view, it's the Satan or whatever, So that's, you have to actually make room for that to happen. But when that does happen and the spirit enters the soul and the seed and the child, that child becomes Christ, which means anointed. Now what that connection is that it's outside of, it transcends the soul. The spirit preceded the soul. Because of that, it's outside of the matrix. And so when the child receives the spirit, which is outside the matrix, to do that, he had to die in time. No, so the entity he thought he was no longer there. The spirit comes in and replaces that entity. And that knowledge of the self, which is the child itself becoming one with the spirit, right? So the spirit becomes one. The Father becomes one through the child, with the child and the mother. And then the child then has the knowledge of its own transcendence. It knows it exists outside of the game. It can then perceive itself outside of the matrix in a way. So that's kind of the process of the child getting transformed through the spirit or the Father, and in turn bringing the material world, turning that into Christ or the anointed man. And at the same time, that soul, that Mary, that mother, which was dark and in chaos, at the same time is illuminated by the spirit as well. So the whole three of them are transformed into one unitary I. So they started with two eyes, and then three eyes, and then they became one eye. And that unitary I, which is preceding identity itself, is actually no thing. So it's nothing. As well as, so it's whole and it's single, and yet it transcends thingness itself, because the very construct that this is taking place in, this trinity, is taking place in existence, in time and space. But the spirit that seeded that transformation came from outside of existence. So it's everything that we know as a thing is within the soul itself, right? So the spirit entered through the hole, through the yoni, through the seed, from outside of thingness. So everything becomes unified in that reality. But because that reality becomes, for that soul, connected with the timeless nature, it then also transcends time at that point. And so that's why the cross is a symbol for time, and also the axis of space, so when you're dying on that, it carries a lot of other correspondence. This article that I wrote about the English alphabet points out that that cross converts into a sword. So yeah, I look forward to reading that. I'm gonna just take a little bit of a break and get a drink of water. Then we can get into it. I'm gonna make a coffee. Fix my incense schema. Okay. Okay. Full disclosure, I had a spliff just before I started the stream, so a little bit toasty. If you've been wondering why it's been taking a few seconds for me to find the right word to say. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stream this window now. Let's hope it works. Okay. Chemical code embedded within the English alphabet order. So, just talked about how these stories are all talking about one thing. They're talking about the one thing that is created by the three things. And essentially, it's like a cyclical repetition. So it's the game generally, when it's completed, it's like it starts again. And the one who starts the game again is the one who beat the game, basically. It was pretty funny. It's kind of like something a kid would do, you know? Like that's why the tarot card, the Fool, is represented by that first and last order. And this is the same thing with the English alphabet. You see that the letter A and the letter Z, in the order of what this is describing, they're reversed. So the letter A is the spirit, which is the father that I've been talking about, and reconciliation with that father is the very sword that destroys space-time, you know? The very sword that that connects all of the spheres together is basically like the serpent. So if you think about the tree of good and evil, right? Eve is the intermediary between that dark knowledge of evil, right? So it's like the dark side, and Eve is the evening. So the evening is between the day and the night. So Eve is like that symbol for the intermediary that is like the fulcrum, the middle point where the two meet. And that's symbolic of, you know, you don't want to just be in the darkness and you don't want to just be in the light. You want to actually be fully balanced within the two for valid unity. Oh my God, I'm so fucking stoned right now. I don't know if I can. I'm just going to keep going and see what's up. I didn't expect this to happen, but what do you expect? Let's try to keep it as light as possible, because this is a heavy fucking subject. This is a heavy article. If I was reading this, I would probably give up immediately. All right. So, what universal secrets can we find embedded within the order of the English alphabet? Let's explore. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABC. So, what I did like a child, I looked at these letters and I was like, well, what sense can I make out of this? What words do they make? And so immediately, the first thing that came to mind was A, B, C, D was like a B chord, like a musical chord. Because if you think about like the stories, if it's in the beginning was the word, like you think the word isn't just written down, but you would speak it as well. Because if you think about like sound vibrations, sine waves, they're represented by like the sound waves basically. So A B chord was what first came to mind, and so the first thing I did was I looked up on Google A B chord. Okay, and it said what makes up the A B chord? Blah blah blah. Now, if you're calling the A B chord a G sharp, because a chord by any other name would sound just as sweet, the names of the notes in the chord would change, but the tones would sound exactly the same. So what's this mean is that A flat or A B chord is the same as G sharp. Now, that tickled my interest because G sharp, or G, is the 7th letter of the English alphabet. And the 7th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Zion, which means sword. And what is sharp? The sword is sharp. Okay. And in a lot of mythologies, the sword is also a sickle. And if you look at the letter G, it looks very similar to like the blade shape of a sickle. So you could say, okay, that's interesting. So A B chord would be talking about the chord G sharp. Okay. So why is that relevant? Well, if you think about again, like the Bible verse, in the beginning was the word. Well, a sword is the S word. So it's basically the first two letters A B corresponding with the word, a sharp word. And so sword or S word is also like sword as in cutting down a tree. And so the cutting down, say, the tree could be referring to the phallus or the father connection, the cutting the tree of life into parts, separate parts. So A B flat is G sharp. The 7th letter G is the sharp sword, and sword cutting down the tree, phallus, father connection. The last shall be first, Z or Zayan, as the sword. Crooked sword equals scythe. So Z is the last letter of the alphabet, and it's coming first here in the order. So the last shall be first. This introduces cycles of time or sickles of time. Saturn is the chronos, relating to the time, the cross, the sword, and the cross. It's a big T for time. And if you just go time, space, kind of that creates an axis. So if you just look at what a axis is, X, Y. It's time space. Just as an example, though, as an extra correspondence. Now, this is just the short summary section. So, as we go down further, there is an expansion on this. So, this introduces cycles of time as a form of darkness, which is a separation of the timeless Father, who is the light. So that 7 again comes into 7 days in a week. And 12 months, as in 12 disciples or Dai pillars. So we're talking about fragmentation again. So at the end of the combination of the Father, Mother, and Son, there's a combination. The pillars are all brought together. The 3 pillars become one. But when the Father's removed, now there's only two pillars. Then they're no longer being connected. Okay. So the word manifestation, just broken down: M for mother, A for father, knife as in the sword, state, ion. So the state of ionization means a seeking towards equilibrium. If you just look it up, what is ionization? Ionization. Ionization is the process where a neutral atom or molecule gains or loses electrons, which is like losing the father or the spirit, becoming an electrically charged ion. Often causes high energy from radiation, collision, or electric fields. This process changes an atom's charge, creating positive or negative ions. Basically, what it does is ion means to go, and it just means like to seek the equilibrium. It will be this like movement. Okay, so the state of ion to go from 3 to 1 or 1 to 3. So in the beginning, it's a state of time and space which creates death. And so this number 31, 3 to 1 would be 1 to 3, just creating separation. Maybe that section should be rewritten. Okay. So we'll just go through quickly. So A, B, C. So CD is also seed. Then there's effigy, EFG, effigy, effigy. Okay, and that means shape, form, vessel, imitation. The next one's HIJK, written hijack there. We could also throw in high joke, high jinx, because this is a game, even though it's very serious. This is actually a cosmic game in a way, and there is high jinx and high jokes. It's all a matter of perspective. All right. So hijack, L, man. So if we talk about splitting a bifurcation of man and L, I think it's just parroting the same thing. Separating the whole thing here, it talks about one thing and one thing only. It's just talking about different stages of that thing. That is separation of the father or the masculine or the spirit. The deadening as a result, because there's no fertility. So everything's just like a reflection of what, or like an inverted reflection of what it should be, but it's not because it's lacking the fertility. Okay, so the old man. The detailed section is much better than this. This is just for people who don't want to read. So maybe I'm just going to skip past that because we'll go to the detailed summary. But I'll just finish the overview quickly. So the Operation Christ U view 10 is 10 is also yon is, and it's referring essentially to the reconnection of the masculine and the feminine, the one and the zero, the spear and the sphere. They come together. That union is the 10, and that 10 is the child and the seed and the yoni. So it's very important to just have a little bit of fluidity when it comes to your understanding of how these words morph and kind of point towards the same thing. Okay. Sorry, I've been finding it difficult to talk to a screen of text. Reading scripts is not something I'm very I don't like it. I need to see some kind of human just so I can pretend I'm talking to someone. So I'll put myself up there. Okay. I don't know how this is coming across. Let me just have a look. Show on screen. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. Talking to the text. I'm just talking to the word. I'm gonna talk to the word. Okay. Detailed summary. Okay, so I just want to make sure it's clear what I'm saying here is that I've extracted from the order of these to say AB seed, effigy, hijack, L meaning God, MN meaning man, OP meaning operation, QRST meaning Christ, and then the last bit, U view 10 is, so tennis or Uranus. All right. So let's go to the detailed summary. AB chord and AB seed. The AB seed. So what begins the whole thing is the winner of the previous game becomes a yoni or a seed, and that seed becomes the very center in which the very center point within the soul, and that center point is the seed and child, and the mother is like the whole field and area surrounding the child, encapsulating the child. Okay, so the game starts with just the mother and the child, right, in darkness basically, and they create this reflected reality, which is like an infertile reality because it's lacking the spirit. Okay, so from G reading this stuff, G sharp and A flat are the same pitch on the keyboard. The symbol B is a flat, indicates a note's pitch that should be lowered by one semitone from its natural position. So we're talking about the equilibrium being disrupted here, the natural position being lowered. Symbolically, the first emanation relates to a sound or word. So in the beginning was the word, yeah. G sharp is named G sharp. G hash is named G sharp, and G is the seventh letter in English. The seventh letter in Hebrew is the letter Zayin, which is a sword. Sword sharp, G sharp. Okay, we got this. I repeat myself so much in these posts. It's insane. In the beginning was the word, the S word. Z is pronounced set in Norwegian. So the letter Z is pronounced set in Norwegian, which was an interesting correspondence because in the ancient Egyptian myth of Osiris representing the fertile masculine father kind of principle, masculine principle, his jealous brother, which is the Set, you can think of him like Satan, basically, is playing that figure at this time. Set killed him, cut his body into many pieces, and scattered them across Egypt. Egypt meaning black soil. So if you think about what is the black soil, it's the black soul, which is the black sun, the black area of the mother, whose like whole field is producing the reality for the child to experience, basically. So that black soil or black soul is like the darkened veil, the veil of forgetfulness, the veil of ignorance that we have. Like, if you can think about it, like most people, when they close their eyes, they see blackness, generally speaking. So it's like that. When you close your eyes, you can pretend like that eyes closed perception is like staring into your soul in a way, you're staring into the dark side of the moon. You're kind of getting a glimpse in a way of that, the darkness that's generating the observable reality in this sense. So that's what the symbol of the black soil. It's also a fertile, the soil is fertile, but the seed is not without the father. So to prevent a proper burial and resurrection, Osiris was scattered by Set, and Isis, who's Osiris's woman, and Nephthys, who's Set's woman, painstakingly recovered all the parts except the penis. And so they basically created a mummy. They tried to stitch Osiris together, right, like a mummy. But that's kind of demonstrating what I'm talking about, how the woman's trying to, the feminine soul, the black soil is trying to create a reality by stitching together a reflection of the father or the spirit without the spirit actually being present. And so the penis never gets recovered, the fertility never gets recovered. And so the reality that they create as a result of that is this like unbalanced kind of hell in a way. It's not representative of wholeness. And so everything in the world becomes almost a reflection of that lack of wholeness, seeking equilibrium. Okay. So Isis, they create the mummy, which is the reality that we're talking about. And that's what the child then experiences as all of reality. And he becomes trapped in time because that reality exists within time. So Set is associated with the number 10 and 7. So remember, G is the 7th letter. And that's what kickstarts this whole thing, 7 days in a week. So when they create time with the sickle or the cycle, they're using the number 7 as a base principle there. In the Greek and Roman myths, Saturn cuts off his father Uranus's testicles. Now, testicles are a symbol of the infinity, which we know is all about cycles, right? Infinite loop. And so Saturn cuts off the testicles with a sickle. Now, if you just look at the word testicles as well, stickles, sickle. So it's cut off stickles with this sickle, right? So what's the difference there is a T. Stickles. So you go from stickles to sickle, you lose the T. We're talking about we're using the time now, we're also cutting down the tree in a way. The T is also kind of like a tree. So we're cutting down the tree, we're cutting off the testicles, and we're taking that T and we're creating cycles of time. And you can see in the word testicles, set, set. So it's written in there, even though this is not an Egyptian myth, they're probably basing it on the Egyptian myth and just encoding it slightly different with a different theme. Instead of a missing phallus, it's a missing testicles, but they're talking about the same thing because they're pointing you towards the cycle of time. Okay, I'm gonna take a water. Step backwards and wrapped around itself. So if you just wrap it around itself, I don't know if this is correct, but it just it kind of stuck out to me as test. If you I don't know if you just reuse that T, but how if the word set and test is very, very similar. It's like they're using the word set as the basis for that analogy, but they're not going to copy it. They changed it from phallus to testicles to make it appear to the scholar as if it's a different story, but it's just the same story. The first order of business is to cut off the fertile masculine farther away. That's wordplay. Cut the fertile masculine farther away, meaning distance, leaving the feminine principle to create without a fertile partner. This section describes the sunset. Sun, as in the sun, the black sun, and the descent into chaos. So the father of the spirit is also the word, which is logos, and logos means order. So because that's removed at the very start, creations comes from chaos, right? So all these stories, all these myths talk about the very first creation principle is chaos. Everything comes from chaos, from the dark nothing of chaos. Okay. This is because the father principle, the game is starting with the father principle out of the picture. And so the father principle is the symbol of order. He is the logos, the ordering principle. So if there's no logos in there, then it's just chaos creating. Okay. So the section describes the sunset. The sunset. So the game starts with the sunset. Now, in the game of tennis, it's the game set and match. Oh my goodness. When I write this, I think it's cool. But when I read it, it's just so childish. The game begins again when the sun/sun, SONSUN, of chaos soared down the tree, SWORD, soared down the tree, which is the phallus or testicles, depending on what story you want to use, and tore the root, which is the connection to the Father, the cable that connects to the Father, the Spirit. And the word tore and tear, so tore, T-O-R, is like torus field. Okay, so we think of torus field. Torus field is the very, almost like the generative structure that produces the matrix, in terms of like, when you want to talk about infinity, the infinity symbol lays directly at the center of the torus field. So on each side are two spheres inside the torus field. One's it's a big 8. Okay, so tor and tear are the same word in a way, just a different tense. And tear actually also means not just to tear open, but to bring to zero. So if you've ever weighed anything on a scale, you'll see a tear button, and what you do is you put something on there and then you press tear and it brings it to zero. So this is, to tear is to bring it to naught and to chaos. Okay, so the reason we're doing that is because at the end of the game you hit 10, and when you hit 10 you basically finish the game. And so you got to bring that 10 down to naught again if you want to play the game again. Okay, so you got to tear the 10. So it's a game of tennis. Okay, so you tear the root, resulting in the disconnection with the timeless Father, Spirit, spawning a new cycle of time, because it's a loop, you know. Now, the word cyclops, which is embedded in Greek and Roman mythology, primarily to one-eyed giants. If you look at the actual word cyclops, it contains cycle and ops. Now, cycle is the name of what Saturn and Set relate to, which is time and cycles and sickles. And Ops is the name of his wife. So the name of his wife is Rhea, where we get Mary in area. But another name for Rhea is Ops. And she actually has another name. We'll quickly check that out. Opus. So that comes up later in the article as well. Her name's Opus. Op is. So we think about like the alchemical work, the great work is called the Magnum or Magnus Opus, right? So we're talking about embedded in these words are like the masculine and the feminine correspondences. It's brilliant. And as long as you're not strict about your correspondences, you'll see the genius of it, because it is genius. Our entire mythological history, language framework, just the way the letters were created, they're all created by an intelligence far exceeding common man. You know, this is the higher order of intelligence that has created this encoding system, and everything's ciphered and encrypted, and it's incredible. But it's so intelligent that the most intelligent minds cannot crack it because they are adult minds. But if you give this to children, which we do give it to children, what happens is they immediately can see the code, and what we tell them is that that's just a coincidence, and we tell them that you're not allowed to use those rules, you're not allowed to break those rules, essentially. We have rules that you need to follow, and that immediately just shuts down that way of thinking. And so it's not completely lost. We can just recover that way of thinking. It's just thinking like it's being childlike, because it's creative. So creativity is about taking what's already there and putting it together in a new way. And so if you think about how we teach children, we teach them to be non-creative. We tell them to stay within the rules, don't create anything new, just copy what we've already done. And that's exactly the same principle that ISIS and Nephthys have used to create a mummy of a reality without the full masculine counterpart. And that's resulted in this patriarchal shithouse that we live in today, because it's just an echo of this cosmic tragedy that ends in success. So like, this is only the start of the story that we're at, but it does end in a very happy ending. Okay, so I stopped reading, so let's get back to the article. Okay, so we cut off the root. So basically think about it like the sun's tearing into this soul. So if you think about the soul is the Maria, the area, the thing that encapsulates the entire observable reality. And the child is breaking into this new reality with a sword. And he's coming from in the center point of this massive circle. A little center point comes in, stabs in there. He's cutting open, like creating like a sphincter. And each line that he cuts open is dividing up time and space, creating systems of cyclical repetition. And that cutting in is like the very beginning. But that sword is also the word. So it's it's the S word. Okay. Now this is a very new idea to me, so I only started writing about this a few days ago, and so there's plenty of polishing to be done. I update it and add more to it every 20 minutes or something, because something new comes in. And the reason I'm doing a video actually is to hopefully stop me from doing that, so I can just put it to a rest. But there's a lot of optimization that can be done, and there's probably a lot of mistakes in there as well, but it is what it is. Okay, so we move on from the ABC. He's coming in and started slashing shit everywhere, fucking totally created a new universe of time and space, and he creates an effigy. We're talking about I'll just read. Effigy means to shape, for example, out of clay. The basic definition is image of a person, from Latin effigies, a copy or imitation of something. Likeness, image, statue, from or related to effingere, to mold, fashion, portray, and fingery, finger, to form shape. Now, I highlighted fingery because we shape things with the hand. And so that word is essentially finger with an E on the end of it, which is not to be, it's not an accident. So it's just more beautiful correspondence. Okay. So we're just moving on to the next. I'll try not to over-explain everything, because these are symbols for something that's happening in you. So you need to take this information and try to see what in your observation you can correspond to this. Because this information isn't where the truth is. The truth is what you can observe in yourself or your reality using this frame as a affirmation of what you already see. Because if you're just taking the information and you think it's valuable, it's completely worthless. Zero. It's worth nothing. Information is worth nothing if you think that that's all you need to do, because it's not. That is, if the information is the matrix, so you got to use that to see what it's pointing to within you. All right, continue here. Hijack from HIJK. Rob/hijack the plane. So you hijack the plane. So this is a modern term, hijack the plane, and you might think, well, it's a modern term. Why would there be something ancient encoded, and then only in modern time would we get the explanation? And that's because the genius of all of this stuff extends backwards through time, almost like it was created in the future. That's the kind of genius that it has. And that's the kind of fucking mentality you want to have when you come into this, because there is treasure everywhere. But if you think it's a pile of shit, then you're not going to appreciate the treasure, right? You're just going to think it's shit. If you don't see the value in it. And that's basically where we're at in the world, is that we're completely surrounded by the answers everywhere we turn. But we think it's all shit because we don't have the context for it, basically. We think we're in like a prison planet, right? We think we're almost like victims, when in reality the whole thing's an education system in a way, because you can't escape from the education. It's embedded in everything: the movies, the music, the mythology. The answers are just repeated. It's just one story being repeated over and over again under different fucking faces. But people see the mask and don't make the connection to what the mask is referring to. And that's like the equivalent of the ego thinking it's all there is, Then it thinks it can die, and it's then spending its whole life, yeah, you only live once, kind of thing. Like, I need money, and you sell out. You sell out because you think you're gonna die, and you're just gonna do what you got to do to survive, kind of thing. Like, that's all created from this limitation of our perception of who we are. Oh man. Oh, I shouldn't have had that derby. But I'll tell you what. If that isn't the best way to put someone off, it's like a screen. So you're like screening out people who are just looking for they're looking for like someone who's perfect, I guess, to tell them before they'll listen to them. This will screen out those people. And if you're worried about someone being high on streamers, they talk to you about this shit, man, well, again, that's your own prerogative. That's your own limitation. I'll just try to keep it like steady and see how we go. Okay. All right. So the hijacking of the planes. So the hijacking of the planes. We're talking about planes of reality. We're talking about a separation. So a separation takes place where the man is like, I'm in the material world, and they don't see that there's a soul world. They don't see that there's a spirit world. They just think that there's only this, and they're an object within this world, and that's everything there is, and it's dangerous and shit. And yeah, I'm a individual living my life in a material world, playing by material rules. I can't see God. I can't feel a connection to my soul. I'm just a meat suit. Everything happens in my brain. That's what generally this type of reality and a separation of the plane creates. It creates the conditions for that perspective. Okay, so the jack in hijack comes from the word John. So you look up the etymology of jack, right? Just showing you, I don't do deep research like most people because I don't even use my memory. I just flow when I do this shit, and whatever Google says at the time, I just roll with that shit. Okay. So the term Jack, pet form of the given name John. Okay, so I rolled with that. I didn't fucking need to read the rest of the description, right? But they do talk about like Jack being like an ordinary man. He has a very deep etymology here, so I don't want to get into all that. But it's just to say that one of those answers is John, and I just roll with that because I could probably write a whole article just on the word John. It's my middle name. Okay. So the Jack and hijack comes from John. John is a slang for penis, which is also Johnson, Johnson. Okay. And phonetically, John comes from the word yoni. Where did I get that from? I just said the word Jean, and I make the correlation, right? But it's a bit deeper than that. Like the letter J is a very recent introduction, and before that, you kind of say it like IO or IE, you know, yon. So yon. So if you say the word John, you can get the word yon, and that's like ION. Okay, so you can just play with that, and you can see that. Okay, well, a yoni is the seed that's referred to as what is the creator of the reality, essentially, like the whole entry point, the dot. Okay, the seed. It's a yoni. It's like a vibe. A womb, a vulva, a vagina. It's like the female reproductive system, essentially. But it's represented later in what I call the os, which is the os. I'll just scroll down quickly. You can see what the os is. It's the cervical os. You can see that on the outside of the os is a circle, and on the inside is a point. And that point is what I'm referring to as the seed. It's the entry point. It's if the outside of the ring, so the inside, the seed in the middle, that's Set or Saturn. It's the child, the sun, the black sun, and everything between him, all the way to the outside ring, is the soul, essentially. Now, what we're calling like the zero, the feminine receptive area for existence. Now, this is what I'd refer to as well as like essentially the root of the matrix. This whole field is like the the entry point and the field of the matrix. Now it starts dark, but then it creates a reflection. That reflection is like the reflected light without the masculine. At the beginning, without the masculine seed. Okay, we'll just continue here. Okay, so John comes from the word yoni, and this hybrid word is both masculine and feminine. So it's really talking about how this overcompensation results in this mother having to create and overcompensate everything because the real fertility is not there. So I think it just makes it interesting when you find these words that have masculine and feminine variations to them. One's a penis and one's a vagina, you know, like it's talking to this very thing. Now, when the male and female forces are separated, it creates a multiple split, torn eyes / eyes. So eyeballs, or eye, as in, you know, when you refer to yourself as an eye, it's the letter I. But like, it's also the pole. So the pole is the eye, but the circle's also the eye. So this is the spear and the sphere. They're the same thing. They're just the masculine and feminine. So as a result, the feminine is that receptive circle soul, the circular, and the circular eye, and that point, that seed in the middle is the pupil, right? Well, guess what? The pupil is the sun. The sun that this game is here to teach, or, you know, he's the player. But he's the pupil as well. He's there to learn, you know, and play. And so it's all eye representation. A circle with the pupil is the eye, and then you've got the letter I. That's the penis, the dad, the father, the spirit. Alrighty, I'm going to repeat myself 1,000,000 times because I can't. You know what? Every story is repeating the same thing over and over again. So once you figure this out, I mean, you can actually put it into action, because that's the whole point of this. It's not to learn about these principles, it's about to realize them in yourself, so you can perform the alchemy within yourself. You can do exactly what we're talking about here, like repair that connection. Okay. So when male and female forces are separated, it creates multiple split torn eyes. Okay, so multiple eyes means multiple poles. So we're talking about poles or pillars as well. And so the separation of pillars is this polarization. Male over here, female over here. Okay? And it creates an ionization potential because there's a missing fucking molecule or whatever, you know, missing electron or whatever they like to call it in science. Okay. So it creates an innate tension. This tension is a pressure. This pressure pushes us towards reunification, right? That's the whole suffering thing. It's we just wake up with an innate drive. We're magnetically pulled towards this, whether we like it or not, whether we realize it or not. Our whole lives are designed to pull us towards this very neutralization. But in the meantime, we've got this pressure, and this pressure is a tension in our life. And the only way we're going to be able to solve that is reconciliation with this masculine father spirit. Now, I'm not saying it's an actual man father. It's just, I think the entire creation is a feminine creation, but it had to create masculine within itself in order to even have this game. But we won't go into that. I just want you to understand that these are just words. There's something in you that precedes words that they're pointing to, and please use these words to find these things inside of you. Okay. These long sections here. Ionization. Take note of what's contained within the ion sat ion. Right? So it's we're talking about the word set or Saturn. Sat is also relates to a Sanskrit word for like the ground of reality, being. Or in the American spelling, ion, I-Z at ion. And we were referring earlier, the Z is like the severance of the Father. It's the sword, the word, the opening. The sword, the seven, the Zayn, used by Set, cutting the masculine eye or tree from the soul, womb, soul, womb, yoni. I can't read. And pressure that acts as a goad to push man towards reunification. The word ion means goer, and ionization means to go. Okay. And the next section is LMN, which refers to L and man. So the verb form to goad, because we're just talking about to go, to push, to pressure. And it's all coming into the Hebrew word for L, meaning for L. So the verb form to goad means to provoke, spur, or drive someone or something forward, often with a sense of annoyance or irritation. The letter L in Hebrew is lamed. It's referred to as the ox goad. So ox in ox goad is comprised of numbers 0 and 10. 0, and then the X is the Roman numeral for 10, signifying the journey from chaos to manifested unity, or 0 to 10. And that's basically with the 1 and the 0 coming together, right? So the masculine and the feminine again reunited. So the bifurcation of man, Adam, and L, which means L means God, which is referring to the Father, the Spirit, describes the relationship between L and man, which is, in this case, severed and veiled. Like, man has no idea that the Spirit or Father even exists at this point. Like, totally blind. And like, even if you told him, he's like has no idea how to contextualize what that even means. Right? The word Adam, man, derives from the meanings son of the red earth. We're talking about sons, souls. They're interchangeable. Son, S-O-N, S-U-N, S-O-L, like the name of the sun is soul. It's not a coincidence. It's put there for you to figure this shit out, because it's talking about one thing only. It's just different masks. So when they talk about son of the red earth, they're talking about, like, if you think about what the earth is, it's like the reflection of the black earth. So the black earth is like that soul, and the primordial soul, black soul with the black sun, they create the reflection. The reflection is earth. The reflection is what we perceive as normal reality, right? And so we could call that the red earth. And maybe I'm wrong here, so I'm just rolling with it for now, because it's much easier to make sense of. If you think like red is the reflection, and black is the source of that reflection. So you've got like almost two souls in a way. You've got your bodily soul, or like your animal soul, your reflected soul, which is the one that you view this light reality with, this reflected reality. But then you've got your black soul, which is where you view, well, say if you went out of body, right? You go outside of your body, you're in a different field. That field is your black soul field. Then you come back in your body, you're now in the red earth field again, you know? It's technically all in the same soul, but it's like, it's not exactly the same. You'd think of like your black soul would be like the circle, and you think about like your human, your human field would be like a square, basically. And the reason for that, in the black soul is the torus field, and that torus field is a hypercube, and what's created from that hypercube is this light field that we call Earth. Okay. All right. So there is a distinction between the sun of the Earth, would be like the human atom body, and then the sun of the black Earth would be your Set, your dark underworld body, basically. But you just got to know that the Earth body is contained as a projection of the black body. Okay, it's very important to understand that, because they speak about these worlds differently in the correspondence, and that's the best understanding I've come to as to what that's actually pointing to, and maybe that will be expanded at some point in the future. Okay, a dam from Adam. A dam means to block up, because we're talking about what do you do with a dam of water? You know, it's blocking up water. And that's exactly what the Father Spirit is. It is a blue water in a way. So if you think about the red earth, well, it's the blue. It's missing this blue spirit, electricity. You think about what color is electricity? It's blue, right? Or at least that's what I think of. So a dam is talking about a severed connection to the Father and the Spirit. Okay. Veiled Son. A veil. It's a veil. Okay. Veiled from the Father. L. Because we're in the section of L and man here. LMN. So veiled from the Father L and pushed towards unification with the L or ox goad. So the ox goad is the thing goading Adam towards reunification. Okay. Reunification back to 10, and 10 is encoded in the letters. Adam backwards is M-A-D-A, Mada, or Mater. Not really. Matter. I don't like this section. It's me playing around with words too much, but basically I like to play with words. So where matter becomes mater, it's just talking about like the earlier tear that we're talking about, which I just like to reference things, point things back to each other. So I'll just keep going. AKA mother tear, but also mother tear as in T-A-R-E, as in naught or zero, the feminine I. And contained in that is ma da. So ma means mother, and da means divide as well as father. So this is like another word, mada, containing within the one word the male and female polarity, as we're talking about, as found in John, yon, ion, which backwards reads no I, or I know I. So I know why, I know and I, which are packed with various meanings. So if you've ever heard of like the Rastafarians, they say I and I. They don't use you and I because they understand that's Babylon. They call that Babylon. Like that's the demiurge, if you want to call it, if you're a Gnostic, like the false system is thinking there's a separation between things within your soul relative to each other. Because the Babylon system teaches you that. But if you understand that this is your soul, that means all the area within it is contained within you. Then nothing inside that circle is separate from you. And the Rastas know this. So that's why they say I and I when they're referring to other people. Because they know it's I and I. But yeah, you can play around with these word combinations because there's just a lot to be played with that I just write them all out, but I don't have time to really contemplate them because I would just never move forward if I did that. Okay. Got a bit of a wheeze going on. I hope it's not coming through the mic. LMN also relates across to elements. Okay, so what are the elements? Salt, mercury, and sulfur, or body matter. It's body/matter, which is salt. Spirit, which is talking about Mercury, which is the thing that travels across all planes. And so Mercury's spirit, and then you got sulfur, which is talking about the soul. Okay. I like playing with like soulfire. I like soulfire, but like if you think about Sophia, and you think about the word sphere, Sophia. So if you wanted to say that sulfur is trying to say Sophia, I think that's fun to play with. So salt, mercury, and sulfur, which are the 3 ingredient requirements for the alchemical operation, known to everybody at this point, and to alchemists as the tria prima, believed to constitute all matter. So it's just these 3 things. It's not complicated. They just use a lot of different words for the same 3 things. And it just like frazzles everyone's brain. Because it's like, couldn't possibly be that simple, but it really is that simple. And all of it's contained within your observation at any given point if you allow it to be seen. So there's like nothing you really need to do exactly. Once you understand what the fuck it's talking about, you can you can instantly reconcile this. That's why it's got to be so complicated, to make people think you got to do stuff. You got to spend a whole lifetime. You got to go 7 lifetimes. You got to go 1,000 lifetimes if you want to wake up. That's what they want you to think. But it's 3 things, 3 simple things, and they're all in one and never separated from us at any time. All that's separate from is our perception of it. Because we're blind. We're basically blind most of the time. And that's okay. That's the whole game. That's the whole game. Wouldn't have a game if we didn't have this blindness. Okay, we're on to the operations section. I'm already getting bored of my own self here, so I hope you're still with me. Operation for the OP, the op, encodes an alchemical transition to the bifurcation. The word opera comes from opus, meaning to work. This is the great work referred to here as the magnum opus, the process to create the philosopher's stone. Of note, opus, which I talked about earlier, or ops, the Greek name for Rhea, is the wife of Saturn, or Kronos in Greek, whose name is Cronus. So Cronus, Ciro, C-R-O, Ciro. He's talking about zero. Okay? Crow is zero. And the nous. So what does nous even mean? Because it's in Uranus, our anus, you know? It's in there. What does it mean? Nous has many meanings, but relates to naught as one of them. But it also means knot or bind. But if you think about knot, again, you're tying a knot, but it also is not, N-O-T, knot. So it's talking about this non-thingness in a way. Okay. But is also used in Magnus, and Magnus means like great, for magnum opus, the great work. Magnum is another form of Magnus. The process to craft the philosopher's stone is called the magnum opus or Magnus opus, just so we can understand that nous is being carried here. Like from Kronos, from basically the Set character, the Set sun, the sunset is being carried over to this nous. So if you look at the word nous, right? What's it backwards? S-U-N. So it's talking about the sun. It's talking about the zero, the set sun. Sun game. Magnus. Sun game. Right? So this child is genius. The child created this whole fucking thing. All the language we're using, everything. This was all made by this genius intelligence, right? It's so smart that it can hide in plain sight. And it takes breaking the rules that it created to be broken to figure that out. So I hope that you can pick that up so that when you're analyzing words in the future, you can understand, yes, they were meant to be played with. All of these words were meant to be played with so that you can find out who you are through their meaning, or what you are, not who you are, but what you are. Okay, or what you're not. The process to craft the philosopher's stone is called the magnum opus. The word mag also relates to the old church Slavonic mazo, to anoint or smear. And I highlighted the words O and I in anoint, so you can understand what's going on here. Because if you think about the letters an, A-N, that refers to the sky. The sky is also another name for Uranus, which is the masculine who was castrated. So it's talking about the father, the spirit. An, and then you got O and I, which represents the the 10, the masculine and the feminine united as one principle, right? But then you've got N and T, which is not. All right, so we've got the whole story in one word. We've got the reason that there needs to be a reunion on the left and right, and then we've got the actual reunion in the middle. So the word anoint is encoding the whole story in 6 letters, right? And you got the word smear there. You add a D at the end of that smear, and you've got dreams, right? Which is just fucking. I like that. I think that's cool because what we consider our life is dreamlike in that way. But I think that's why we dream in the first place, to teach us that. So yeah, continuing on, which ties into the definition of Christ, Messiah, meaning the anointed. Right? So that's the whole next section here. So we're talking about the operation. Then we're talking about like why. What is the reason for the operation? It's the philosopher's fucking stone, man. It's the greatest treasure in existence that no one can buy. It's the holy grail. It's the thing, the object of all of these myths. The greatest stories of all time are pointing everybody to this object, the philosopher's stone. So I'm going to read this in a minute. I'm just going to go to the toilet. The weed's kind of easing off a little bit. How long we got to go? Fuck, man, this is like a massive article, man. I don't like to read. I'm gonna go make a coffee. How we looking? How we looking? Just contemplating whether I finish it today. We're gonna make coffee. We'll find out. All right. Boomba, boomba. It's the Bomber Club. Coming to you live, not live anymore, man. Spotlight. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to keep going. I got my coffee. This should wake me up from the dead. Okay. Yes, we're still streaming. Okay. Christ. All right, shit. So just before we do the Christ thing, so we're just talking about the seed comes in with the word, starts cutting shit up. Effigies are created, planes are hijacked, separated. The division of Ellen, man. Now, this could also refer to like a demiurge or, but I don't want to overcomplicate it. Then you got the alchemical operation. I'm just looking at this word OPS, ops, opus. And we learned that the word anoint contains on and not, and their union, O and I. Okay. Now on to the Christ. So the Christ etymology says that it means anointed, smeared with oil. So what is oil? Let's break it down. O plus I plus L. So 1 I L, if you want to say is God, then 1 I God. But as we've talked about earlier, the O is an I, but the I is also an I. So it's technically a 2 I God. But it's almost like the combination of O and I is the combination of the two. So you could say their combination as it makes it a 1 I God. What's interesting is Christ is symbolized by the rose, and he rose from the dead. And in the Egyptian myth, it's Horus who rise from, I don't know if it's from the dead, but he rise, Horize, as in the sunrise, because the brother Set is relating, or the uncle Set is relating to the sunset. So his, like Uncle Scar from the Lion King, and then you got little Simba, who's a little who rise, coming up from the underworld to rise from the dead. So this Jesus, sorry, not Jesus, the Christ, he is the archetype for the hero, heroes. Within that word is heroes. The Mother Mary, Christ's mother, relates to Mary. Now the Marys remember the soul as well. So she's the encompassing field surrounding the child, which is the seed at the center. But the name mare is also a word. Now, word meaning female horse. If you check out the word mare, it's actually pretty packed with a lot of definitions. So if we look down, okay. So if you look at this word mare, there's 3 definitions, main definitions. You've got your horse section. Now, horse is also a word for like something you ride, right? So if you think about like who's the rider, well, the Horus is the sun, he's riding. And if you look at the word horse, it's like Horus. Okay. Mare, Maya. So we're just looking at where they come from. Mer. So if you think about like America, myrrh is also a resin on a tree. And myrrh is the resin associated with death. So you burn it during death rituals. Got the word Mary, Merrie. You know, we're talking about relating to like the Christmas Mary. Feeling merry, like ho ho ho. You know, that word is basically just means jolly merry, but it's symbolically pointing back to this mother principle. So beside meaning a horse, which is pointing to the vehicle, the car, you know, the thing that gets ridden. It's not just Horus, but the Horus himself is the child who has been connected back with the fertile father. And so it's technically the father riding the mother, Mary, you know, through the seed. So the seed and the father become one, basically. So it's like a possession. And possession is a really important word because it relates to Poseidon, who is the lord of the earth, whose name comes from Posisda, Poseidon. Oh my goodness. We'll go back to this man page though. I don't want to get too lost before I go down to the Poseidon route. So the other definitions of mare is the dark area of the moon. So I think we mentioned it briefly. Is that dark, the generative force of the soul, the one that projects the reflected reality, the red earth, is the black soul or the black earth, which is the name for Egypt, the meaning of the word Egypt. And if you look at the word mare, which is like Mary, that's the dark area of the moon. So we're talking about the black sun, basically, the unilluminated, without the father. Okay, so that's encoded just in one meaning of the word mare. We go down to the next one, and it says night goblin, incubus, oppressed, sleep. Mare, incubus, nightmare, monster, witch, sorcerer. You know, goblin, nightmare, incubus. So if you think about these correlations, you know, it's talking about the night, the dark side of the moon. This is the black soil, the black sun, the hidden, the scary place. And if we think about the word Eve and the word horizon, which is like Horus, they're both signifying this middle point that is the bridge between the darkness and the light. And so just think about that, is the rising sun, Horus, is the one who is bridging both sides together, or at least the Christ version of this It's not just about being in the light, it's about being the middle pillar that joins the light and the dark together back into a wholeness. And finally, this section says that myrrh relates to this pi root, to rub away harm or to die, right? So it's talking about death. So we're talking about the dead creation, the dead creator, essentially. It's dead because it's missing its fertile seed, fertile father. Okay. Now Poseidon, we brought up. He's heavily correlated with the horses and the hippopotamuses, which is where we get the word horse from. Is related to hippos. Comes from, I think it's hippos. But Poseidon, the word itself, etymology, talks about it being husband or lord. So if you think about the word Poseidon, for example, Don is relates to Adonis, but Don itself just means kind of like lord or master. And possession is talking about like it's from this root it's relating to potency, potential, possess, potency, power, and that too means lord. But I think it was the Latin breakdown of Poseidon is possis da, and da means earth. And possis meant lord, basically. So lord of the earth. But it also means husband. So it's talking about a masculine principle. A husband is the tiller of the soil. So if we talk about, again, the soul is also soil. You've got the black soil and you've got the red soil. The black soil is the black mother, and the red earth is the reflection. So if we look at the actual etymology around husbandry, it talks about tilling soil, essentially. So it relates to farming. I really can't be bothered actually going through the etymology of Poseidon, because I think it will be worthy of its own article, but it will come up later here. So just go back to this article for now, or I don't think I'll ever finish. Okay. Where did we get up to here? The Mother Mary relates to mare, which we've just gone through. It relates to more than just mare. It relates to dreaming as well, nightmares. And we're just talking about how anointed, next to anointed was smeared with oil, and backwards is smear is ream. So if you add the D, like the door, to that, you've got dream. And so the door is the gateway to the reflected earth that we see. Essentially, we're in the dream that's being produced by that black soil, the black mother, the Black Mary. Okay, the horse, her os. So we talked earlier about the os, which is the cervical os. It's the thing that gives birth to the child, to the seed, but it's like the very ground of that taking place. It's the ground of where the delivery takes place of the child, of the spirit. And it's also the operating system, the OS, that delivers the heroes, which is highlighted here, Eros. If you've heard of the myth of Eros, it's talked about in a moment. But so it's the operating system, or the cervical os, that delivers or births the heroes via hieros, gamos. So again, these words being used: horse, heroes, hieros, heroes. You know, they're all pointing back in a circular fashion to each other, and they're all talking about the same thing, and they're just mixing the letters up a little bit. So the Greek, hieros gamos, Greek for sacred marriage, which is talking about this process of reunifying the spiritual masculine principle. The game is spelled out clearly in the symbolic correspondence. In the myth of Eros and Psyche, Psyche descends to the underworld and falls into a death-like sleep, and Eros rescues her from that chthonic state. See how Eros is just one story within a huge pantheon of myth, but we're really talking about the same story over and over again. Over and over again. Because it's the only story that matters. Just with a different mask. So we're just talking about oil, how it, in one interpretation, very loose interpretation at that, it spits out the one-eye god, right? But it turns out to be a pretty fucking cool thing that it's just spat out, because in Norse mythology, the one-eye god is Odin. And his symbol, weapon, is the spear. Right, so we're talking about the spirit masculine father is missing. Well, Odin is called the All-Father. So it's not just random shit that these correspondences come out with, but they're actually direct signs pointing straight to the same thing over and over again. So you got the one-eye god Odin. He's a symbol for spirit. He's a mercurial symbol. He's the chief god in Norse mythology, named the All-Father, who's the masculine, with his phallus spear. And in the story himself, he actually sacrifices one eye to receive wisdom. And that's talking about the recombination and the sacrifice that's required. So like within the stories themselves, they have the whole story holographically encoded within the sections of the story. So you can't escape. Even if you don't realize or see what's going on, you can't actually escape the story that's being told. So because we don't perceive it, we are ignorant. But we can't say we were ignorant. We can't say we weren't told, because it's the only story being told. Okay. Odin sacrificed his eye for wisdom, or known as the knowledge of the runes. Wisdom comes from the Greek word Sophia. And phonetically, if you say the word Sophia and sphere, it's the same word. So it's another symbol. Obviously Sophia is a different story, but she's just filling in the same feminine archetype of the circular eye, the receptive principle, the woman without the man, or she's waiting for the man or whatever. So we've got Sophia, which is another symbol for the Eros, the operating system, the eye, the O, the soul, the feminine. Christ, the child of the union between the masculine and feminine, is the philosopher's stone, a product of the alchemical work, born from union of yin yang, or hieros, gamos, which is like hieros and gamos. So if you look into these, right, you could probably play with those two words alone and come out with the whole sequence that we're talking about. like explained within the words themselves. The alchemical work describes the process of spirit. This is like where we're getting into the meat of what you can actually do with this information. Because otherwise it's just a lot of wordplay and you're like, what the fuck am I gonna do with this? So the alchemical work describes the process of spirit visibly entering matter through the soul, which is the spear entering the sphere, uniting the I, male I, with the O, the fem I, crafting the IO or the tan or the /TEN. And so if you think about, they create the tan, right? Which is this Christ child. Now, what is Christ symbolically known as? He's a carp enter. So what's a carp? Carp's a fish, right? So he's a carp enter. The fish is entering. Now, he's also a fisherman. Now, how do the fishermen catch fish? They catch fish with a net. And so what is TEN? 10 backwards is the net. Okay. So it's got it there. I don't even know what to say about it because I've had these thoughts running through my head for like 3.5 years now, and I've not really talked about it. And when it's coming out now, it's like I don't even know what to say anymore. At first, it was like all profound, and now I'm just like, well, it's fucking obvious. You know, it's just move on to the next thing now. Okay, so coined by Jung has threefold conjunctio, so it's like conjunction, threefold conjunction, meaning a union of soul, spirit, and man / world / matter. Okay. So when spirit enters flesh through the single eye of the soul, the single eye of the circle, the single eye, and the pupil in the middle, right? You don't have to worry about the pupil in the middle, but when that happens, when the spirit enters flesh through the single eye of the soul, the spirit or word becomes flesh, and the man is reborn as Christ, the one-eye God. Okay, so this is just kind of defining what is Christ, because you don't want to confuse Christ with the spirit. Christ is like what happens after the spirit has entered man. It's not the spirit itself. Right? Because what does it mean? It means the anointed one, right? You're not anointed without the man. So there is no Christ without the man. The man is what defines the Christ. But it's through the spirit that it's the spirit or the Father, the water of the Spirit is what actually baptizes the man into Christ and rebirths him, basically. Okay, so when the Spirit enters flesh through the single eye of the soul. So if we just take a step backwards, if we think about the very basic definition of what we've been talking about, it's only 3 basic things. They're all eyes, right? We've got the female eye. She is the entire vessel for reality. She is like the circumference, and then anything within the circumference is coming from her fertile soil or soul. Right at the center, we're talking about the black side of things here. So you close your eyes when you think about this. You close your eyes because we're not talking about the earth yet. We're talking about the thing that creates the earth. So you close your eyes and you think about that whole field of reality. That's the soul. And then right at the center, there's like a black point, basically. That's the seed or the sun, right? And because it starts off black, haven't got the father, basically. What needs to happen is that the son, who's that center point, he like realizes he's in this field, which is his mother, right? And he invites the father back in through him, which is the center point. And essentially, that center point is only the doorway. But once the father gets in, that's, you've got a party. Yeah, you've got all three of you together. But unification is more than just hanging out with each other. It's an actual sexual process where the entire field is in like a receptive feminine process. The spirit is invited to become one with the entire field, so that as you're observing this field of darkness with this illuminated father, you realize, oh, the father's in me, but I don't want it to be like an object. He's an object to me, and there's still a separation, right? So you go, no separation. What I see is what the father sees. And so you're essentially the entire area, Maria, is offered up to the father, basically. So that area, that Ria, is the entire space of reality and existence. And the seed is observing that the whole time, right? People talk about you're the observer. That's what we're talking about. Like, you are the pupil looking out at your field from the very center. And so when it's blind and hasn't got the spirit, when you see the spirit, you got to realize, oh, that spirit needs to share my vision, which is the entire field. And so the reconciliation is happening on that level before we're even talking about the earth realm. So you might have your eyes closed and you're seeing the darkness and this field that I'm talking about, but you might be in meditation out of your body, whatever is happening. We're not talking about when you open your eyes, the reflected field. We're not talking about that field. Okay? Just so there's some differentiation, because when you open your eyes and you're seeing all these objects made of light, they're the reflection of that process that's happening behind the scenes. And because that's only a reflection, that's not where the real activity happens. Okay, so that's why I'm saying, like, if you want to reconnect with your soul, you kind of got to stop being distracted with all of the fucking reflections and go to the point of origin of those reflections. Because that's where the alchemical operation is taking place. And the reason I say that's where it takes place is because that's where you're not going to fucking observe this very easily if you're already seeing all this light and you think that's the same light of the spirit, because it's not. The light of the spirit isn't dead. It's not a reflection. Because if you open your eyes and you're looking at the world, what you're seeing are light rays. You think about laser, right? You think about laser, you point at the laser, the light you're seeing, it's dead light. It's not swimming around like a smoke or a fire. It's a ray. It's a pointed ray. It's a reflection. That's not a living light. That's a dead light. So when we look at the world, we're looking at the reflection of the laser, the light that's being projected. But when I'm talking about visualizing the soul and the dark, the dark mother, we're talking about seeing the point of origin where the beam gets created. And so the threefold reunion of soul, spirit, and man's actually taking place on that inverted dark plane. You call it the underworld. You call it the underworld because it happens in the darkness, in the void. Whew, okay. So when spirit enters flesh through the single eye, blah blah blah. Okay. So then I'm giving a breakdown of the process now. So spirit is the way and means for man's spiritual rebirth, serving as the visible bridge. I'm saying it's visible. It's not some concept. This is real light, living light. I don't want to tell you. You got to figure this shit out for yourself. If I tell you what it looks like, it's gonna ruin it. But it's not a dead reflected light. You know the difference pretty as soon as you see it. Okay. Serving as the visible bridge. So it's mercurial in nature, and Mercury is just known for, what's he known for? It's the serpents wrapped around the pole. So it's traversing the pole. He traverses the planes, the poles between the father and the mother. On one pole's the father, heaven. The other side's the mother, the black soil, the receptive. And Mercury is the principal, the middleman for that. And that's what the spirit is. So you don't want to confuse the spirit for the actual father. It's the messenger for the father. It's mercurial in nature. It's the medium, I guess. Because the father isn't in existence in the way we think of it. So he needs something to act as a body, essentially. And that's what the spirit is. Okay. And so in Islam, they call that messenger, they call him Muhammad. It's basically, before anything else, there's Muhammad. And Muhammad's God's first reflection, basically, is like this light, this spirit, this if you think of God as I don't want to think of God as anything. We've spoken enough about that. We'll just move on. Between the planes, the spirit is the bridge between the planes, separating the father from man, from soul. The soul of man is the black ground, the soil, the /soul, a fertile underworld, encapsulating the flesh and yet extending beyond the material plane. And it just means because the material plane is an effect of this soul being the cause, basically. And that's produced using this torus field. Okay. Now, the soul encompasses man's total field and vehicle across all planes, from center to circumference, acting as the receptive vessel and matrix /womb, which is the feminine matriarch, with seeds. And we're talking about arches here. So if we think about it's a circle, it's made of arches, right? It's not made of angles. So with the seed opening at the very center, and that's how anything gets in at all. So it's not a totally closed system. We just start off confused thinking it is, and because we think it is, that becomes what it is until we fix it, our perception. Okay. So the symbol of the sun /sun SOL/SOUL is a circle with the dot in the center. So the symbol for the sun is a circle with a dot in the center. We're talking about the black sun of the soul, or even the enlightened one, it's still going to be represented in this way, because it's the feminine and the yoni principle, the eye of existence. So this soul is a circle with the dot in the center, which is also an eye or an os, os. Os meaning operating system in modern times, but originating from mouth opening or orifice. The cervical os, pronounced O's, refers to O's. I don't know why I put that there. Refers to O's. I don't know, maybe that's worth contemplating at some point, because I can see, like, we were talking about ho 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 earlier, right? And it's like, where do they get ho ho ho? And it's like, well, it's OHS. Anyway. The cervical os refers to the small opening at each end of the cervix. So there's two of them. The lower, narrower part of the uterus that opens into the vagina. The external os faces the vagina, while the internal os connects to the uterine cavity, acting as a gateway that changes size for menstruation, sperm passage, and childbirth, opening significantly during labor for the baby to pass through. This os of the soul is the opening for the spirit to penetrate into the very center. We're talking about through the seed, So, and this picture is of the cervical os. Well, I'm just repeating myself here, but then we start writing soul backwards. So I like stuff like that. So if you look at soul backwards, like SOLE, for example, backwards is EL, which is the word for God, and then OS, like OS, or operating system. So you can think of it like God operating system. But then you've got SOUL, conventional spelling, which backwards is LUOS. So you think about LU, that's a word used in lux, meaning light or illumination. Lucifer, which means the bearer of light. And if you think about bearing, we're bearing a child, we're bearing the philosopher's stone within us. And it's through this soul, or through the os, the opening, that this takes place. Okay. The spirit of man is the illuminating projective force, the masculine, which penetrates the soul's black hole to fill it with light. So how is this done? Well, one way to see his soul, although not limited to, is when man leaves the body. This happens every day when we dream, or when we meditate, or even through imagination, where you can visualize yourself somewhere. And if you've, if you do that well, it's basically you're going out of body. And what I mean doing it well is, like, anyone trying to do anything like this is going to have like a barrage of thoughts coming, interrupting them. And if you want to do it well, you got to learn how to let that happen without feeding into it. Because if you try to stop thoughts with thoughts, you're just adding more thoughts. This is all about learning about yourself, basically. But if you can get to a point where you're in your imagination in like a happy place, then you've set the stage to be aware of yourself in your soul, and you're technically outside the body. And that's when you can witness reality through the circle instead of through the square. Okay, but people do that all the time. They don't make the connection because they're not thinking about those things. But if you do it with intention, who knows what will happen for you. Okay, so he's separated from his body, and then he's seen that, oh shit, there's a field of reality, and everything that I imagine is going to take place within that field of reality. Oh shit. Okay, then he's just become acquainted with like his soul, the area of his soul. And if he goes, oh, where's the border of that? Oh, he's going to find the border of that. Shit, it's going to be a circle. Oh, okay. I've just discovered the border of my observable soul. Soil. We're talking about soil here. It's all about, it's the same fucking words. Okay. So you're going to plant your seed, but you haven't got good seeds. So you need a good seed. So how are you going to get good seed? Well, you've just realized that you've got a garden plot. You've never realized that before. Where you finally observed, oh shit, I've got a soil. I've got soil. Here's the edge of my soil. Everything in it is mine. It's my garden. And then you invite the spirit, who is like the only good seed manufacturer you're aware of. Okay. So then he sees the spirit and he realizes, oh, my whole field's here, but I'm seeing the spirit here, like as an object. And I know that my whole garden is here and you're just a little object. And that's a mistake. So what's the mistake? The mistake is perceiving the Father as separate from you, perceiving the Spirit as separate from you. And because as long as you think of it as an object, you're not going to have the idea that you're making a mistake by doing that. And so this is when you got to realize you've made a mistake. You've made an object out of the only living principle, basically. And so if you realize your mistake, you can fix it. And that's what this process is about doing. It's about repairing the broken cable, the broken root that was severed. Okay, so you're in your soul and you've manifested your spirit, you've invited your spirit's manifested, you've realized it's a mistake that you've separated yourself as an object and you don't want to have that separation anymore. You, with your whole field, can then invite the spirit to return back as you, so that your vision is its vision, your field, your body is its body. Okay? And we've just taken multiple eyes and we're forming them into one unified whole circle, essentially. That's what this whole fucking thing is. All of this is all about. Blah, blah, blah. I don't even really hear you offering it. Your vision and your body, the total field of space-time for the spirit to enter into, merging the soul's feminine eye with the spirit's masculine eye. The two eyes become one single eye. It's becoming a 10. You become a 10. You're going from 0 to 10. There's no pathway between. It's just 0 to 10. Okay. The newly married couple. So you've got your soul and you've got the spirit who are just having a fucking hoot. And they're enjoying their little honeymoon. Honey meaning yoni or tenni, like ion I. The two eyes are the one eye. So they have a short honeymoon. I've highlighted moon here because that's actually more than just that phrase gives you a different meaning. Once you actually experience this, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to give you spoilers. But we did talk about how the moon was the symbol for the dark side, the hidden soul, the dark side of the moon. So essentially it is a symbol for the soul itself. And so you've you've made a yoni out of the dark sun. You've brought light to it. You've begun an illumination process. Okay, so after enjoying their short honeymoon, they descend into the material plane, which is the reflection. Okay, and then what they do is they enter that material eye, which is you'd call it like the animal soul, or the human square soul. And you undam Adam. You realize, okay, we've been having our party. The soul and spirit are one again. We are the one. We are a single body now. We move singular. That light is the light of my soul now. And then you go, oh shit, we have a body. That's right. Like, we better go bring that one into the party and like tie this or untie this whole knot that's being tied. And so they descend into the reflected body of Adam. They undam him. They join the Ma and the Da, which is the mother and the father, but the Ma and the earth, the Da, which is a word for earth as well. So they're like uniting the soul and the earth together into that sphere. Yeah, so they're actually joining the material and the abyssal planes essentially into a unified plane. And that has a lot of perks and benefits, but essentially it just means you're not having to like meditate to go back there. You realize they were never separate, and you can actually begin to see that as a result. And I can't explain what you're going to see because you're going to have to see that for yourself. This final descent brings a living fire light into the material eye and body, and encompassing all space within the material world, which is normally comprised of dead, refracted evil eye light. Okay, so we're talking about with the laser pointer, how that's just shooting out reflected dead light. And this is the same concept, is that the earth you normally were seeing was just comprised of that reflected light. So everything was dead. Okay, and that's referred to as the evil eye. Okay, it's evil just in the sense of it didn't have the father in it, right? It didn't have the living light, so it was evil. What's living backwards is evil. So we're living in this inversion, basically. That light became an inverted light, and the earth became an inverted earth, essentially. But the spirits descended now, so we've taken this evil light eye, and we've reversed that, and we've brought that living light back into the reflection. So it's actually no longer a reflection anymore. It's genuine creativity, and it's fertile. It's not just the mother creating, but it's the mother and the father creating. And that's when just the world is seen no longer as fixed, as in there is no such thing as fixed objects, because everything is alive and moving. It's actually, you realize it's all the spirit. You realize that actually everything is all the spirit, and you only just realize you could see it now, but it's always been that way. Okay. But this is a visible thing, so this is not like you're not like, oh, I said words and now I believe them. It's like, no, you actually saw this happen. You made it happen through you, and the living light I'm talking about, the movement I'm talking about, this is shit you see. It's not you're imagining. You're not imagining it. You're actually seeing it. It's not a concept, right? So it's not a belief. You have true gnosis, right? You don't need to formulate words to prove it's true, because you can't even describe it with words, because all the words refer to this dead refracted world. So the words can't properly describe it in a way. So moving forward anyway, because getting too excited, and this is a long video, long article. Well, it's taking a long time for me to get through it. It's not that long. Okay. Christ is born in... This is where Christ is born in man. This is when the whole world is redeemed, essentially. United back into the black soul. The Mother Mary produces the Christ child, and Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man. And we're talking about S-U-N of man, S-O-N, S-O-L. We're talking about the soul of man, because it's the same soul. Jesus didn't have a different soul from you. He had the circle, the same circle that you've got. Here's a quote. No one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came from heaven, the Son of Man. John 3:13. I'm just going to go take a leak, and then we'll finish this off. Okay. Man. What do we got here? Oh, man. This is... Okay. I don't know. We're going to go through this, but we're not going to be going through it all. At the end of the alphabet is U, V, W, X, Y, Z, and this has a lot of combos you could do with it, but the one I went with was U view tennis, or U view tennis, or U view yoni, if you want to follow the same formula we've been talking about. All right, the set is complete. Now we're talking about the set, the dark sun, the sunset, the Saturn, the Satan is complete now. He's got the Father back in his life, and he realizes there's more to this, more to who he is. There's more than just the material world. He's had the immortal, eternal, timeless spirit enter him and become one with him. And because of that, he and the Father are one. And then he realized, at that time, he is completed. The whole world is redeemed. The tennis game. He finally actually can understand the ride he's been on. Up until that point, he just simply couldn't have any context for where or when or what he is. And then after the spirit enters him, so does the order, so does the knowledge, so does the memory, so does just lifetime, like cosmic universal wisdom becomes one, and the Satan becomes the Christ. It was always the same son the whole time. It was just he was in different phases of the game, and it's his game. So let's go. The game is deciphered. And if you know what cipher means, it's like encryption, Okay. If you don't have the key to decipher something, then it provides a null value or like a naught value or nothing value. It's meaningless, it's valueless. And then you get the key, and then all of a sudden it unscrambles everything and it has all the meaning, and the value is revealed. The treasure is revealed. The same treasure that was unperceivable before now is seen as the very salvation instruction manual, so you can finally understand the game he's in, and that's what happens. It's not like the illumination comes in, but it comes in all at once. You need in time. When you're in time space, you need time to actually process and understand things. You can't instantly fathom the details. You might have the instant gnosis, but the details to explain it require time. And so with this remaining time that the set has, that the child has, is essentially learning about himself, the game, the construct that he's been living in. Because the transcendence is instant because the spirit's already been outside the game, and outside the game there is no time. So the idea of transcendence is only relevant inside the game. So figuring it out needs to be done in the game as well. Otherwise, it's just not going to be relevant. As soon as you're out of the game, you're just going to be like, fuck, I'm free now. Fuck that shit. You won't even be interested. So while you're in the game is when you need to figure it out. That's where the real prize is. That's how it's set up. If you don't do it that way, you're just playing like most people. You're missing it. Okay. The spirit has entered and extends in from the outside the matrix and outside of time, like an alien entering the system. Integration with spirit extends the whole outside of time and marks the end of the time cycle. You view as reconciled by the serpent, which is the spirit lightning bolt, scaling the whole tree of life, unifying all of the spheres, the tenors, the ionis, the 10 is, and bursts in equilibrium through the third middle child pillar. And if you look at the Kabbalah tree of life, there's 10 spheres there. So we're talking about a game of tennis. So it's not just the masculine and feminine being the 1 0 making the 10, but we're just talking about like multiple levels of correspondence here, 10 dimensions, 10 aspects, 10 spheres, archetypes, emanations, numbers. The numbers 1 from 10 all have their own little meaning. It's all got to do with that, basically. It's like the path we travel is this from the ox from 0 to X, 0 to 10, and then beyond. So in Ionis or tennis, you've got the IS at the end or the IZ, depending on which one you want to do. Because if you actually look at the alphabet, the last one's Z, so it's Y is like an I, and a Z is a Z, or it could be an S. But the Z is like this, the sword, which is the Zayin, the 7th letter. And the S represents the serpent, and we're talking about the serpent was in the Garden of Eden on the tree of knowledge and good and evil. So it's a symbol of gnosis, reconciling the dark source of reality with the reflected image that's created from it. And so if you think about the Garden of Eden, it was like just a reflection. And so Adam needed the serpent to introduce him to the origin of that, which is the soul. And Eve is the bridge that enables that. Okay, the zigzag pattern is the sword or silence. So people say the S word is silence. And if you think about silence, it's psi, meaning psychology, the mind, or whatever, psi, and lance. And if you look at the trident, it's the symbol in Greek is called psi, psi, and that's the number 23. And that's like representing also like the Lord, the Father, the light, and it looks like a candlestick as well as the trident, right? So then we've got an image of Dendera light. It's just got these massive bulbs there, depicting the birth of a child god named, translates to Horus, who rise, horizon, who unites the two lands. So his essentially name is referring to a horizon or the middle, similar to Eve being the middle. Holding up the right side is the Djed pillar Osiris. And Osiris is the father figure that's been cut off earlier. So the two lands represented by two bulbs are Johnny's. So if you think about like Eve is like the material middle pillar, and Horus is like the seed or the soul middle pillar in a way. So they're both operating under the same symbol, but on two different levels of reality. Okay, backwards tennis, like the game of tennis, 10 is sign T, which is sign of the cross, or sign of 10. If you do X, Roman numeral is 10. And the word cross comes from the Latin crux, meaning, which backwards, using 10 as X, is ten-C, phonetically similar to Tennessee. And we're talking about like the 10 is, or the 10 spheres even. And with the I and the S, we're talking about the serpent and the tree conjoining the net, or 10. So just like in regards to a net, the torus field that generates the reflected image is comprised of a net. And if you observe that, you'll see that basically a grid-like structure overlaid like augmented reality. Okay. So the one or the I is the masculine spirit. I think we're going to repeat ourselves a lot here. So we just talk about Ionis a lot, like Yonis, how it's formed by the tennis code. I'm not going to read all this. The 10th English letter is J, and the 10th Hebrew is Y or Yod, both forming the first letter of the name of child Jesus or Yeshua, which in Hebrew means salvation. There's more in there to expand, but we don't need to. Then similarly from Egypt, Aten, Aten was the ancient Egyptian sun disk deity, elevated to supreme soul god status. We're talking about SOLE here, soul, but it's the same fucking thing. Soul, soil, soul. And backwards, Los, God-os. It's the God operating system, okay? That's your field. You. All right, we're on to you. Where do we get to you? Oh, okay, because, okay, so all the way up here, it's like U view 10. All right, so we're talking about U, like in the English alphabet. U is the double wand. If you look at U, it's like an eye that's been wrapped around itself to form two pillars. So you could say it's like a double wand. I don't know why. I think I've been influenced too much by occultist. I would never have written this if I wasn't listening to occultists for like speaking 7 hours a day or whatever. Like listening to like Kenneth Grant audiobook recently, for example, has helped me piece together some things. But as a result, it infects my way of speaking. Maybe it will become more relevant later. But you is the double wand, and you view is the universal view. So it's like combining these two eyes into one. So the you is actually a unification of pillars. Uni means single. Okay. You and I. But we should really call it the Yoniverse at this point. And I might have to trademark that if it's not already done. The S. Okay. We're talking about the S. The S is relevant, so we're just going to roll with it. The S also contains W's. And if we think about what that is, the S is like a sideways U at the top. And then if you rotated it 180 degrees at the bottom, it's another U. So it's two U's connected. Okay. So the S also contains double U's conjoined, intertwined on their side. The double U, or W, like the actual W, is the symbol of the three pillars conjoined as one. In Hebrew, the W is Shin. And if you look at the symbol for Shin here, it's three pillars conjoined, but it's also two U's, or, you know, a V and a U. But if you think about the letter U itself, in history has been interchangeable with the letter V. And W is comprised of two U's or two V's. So you might want to look that up if you've never heard of that. It's pretty interesting. So in gematria, Shin, which is, we're talking about the so the Hebrew letter Shin, which is we're just talking about as the W basically, because Hebrew doesn't really have the W like we have it, so like English has it, and that's because they only had 22 letters. And if you think about the W in English, it's the 23rd letter. And the sequence U, V, W, you know, it's basically U. Anyway, the W in English is 23rd, which is a really important number because that's also related to the trident symbol, the psi symbol, which is the 23rd letter of the Greek alphabet. And so while Shin isn't W, it is, if you look at the symbol of it, it's the same symbol as the trident and the W, and it also means basically the same thing as the trident. Shin means tooth, and if you think about trident, dent is like dental. So dental is also relating to like identity. So how do you identify a dead body? Is with the teeth. So the tooth. So the tooth and the dent, the dentist, you know, it's totally related, like only in a way a child can understand. So please be like a child if you want to wrap your head around that one. They're all very important that they correlate to each other because they're a symbol for this Lord, Father, Husband. Okay, so in gematria, Shin represents the number 300. The breakdown of its namesake, Shin, 300. Yod, which is 1 and 0, or 10, which is the first letter of Jesus in Hebrew, Yeshua, Y. And Nun, which has its own symbology, but it represents like the fish, the nothingness, but also like almost like the seed as well, the child. This is talking about the combination of the father and the mother and the child together. They make the number 360, which is important because we're talking about the field of reality being contained within the circle. So this is talking about the squaring the circle. is talking about unifying the entire reality in 360 degrees. The whole circle, becoming the eye, so that there's no more division within the eye. So that fullness of the circle is the soul eye. And so these three eyes, the father eye, the mother eye, the child eye, becoming one eye. And why is that important? Because the trident is a pitchfork with three prongs on it, leading down to one prong. So the three becoming one. That's the trident. That's the letter W. That's the number 23. And so there's 22 cards in the tarot, right? The 23rd is the number of the new cycle. And so when they come together as the yon or the tennis or the 10, this is the complete triad, basically. 360 degree circle. Okay. The word Eve refers to the fulcrum point between day and night. I talked about this earlier. So we're just going to fast forward through this. This is about gematria. How with one variation you've got 5 and 5, which is talking about the creating the 10. And then you've also got how you can make another 5 out of the V using a Roman numeral, which you would produce 15 from Eve. And then if we're thinking about U and W being interchangeable and you wanted to play with, like in Hebrew, for example, V and W are both, so they're the fifth, I think they're the sixth letter, I think it is, Vav or Wa, W-A-W or V-A-V. And they're interchangeable. So the V and the W are played with interchangeably in Hebrew. So if you put the V in Eve with a W, you would have the word U, E-W-E. Okay? And then if you did the gematria on that, the W being a 23, which itself adds up to 2 plus 3 is 5. So you can get the 15 again. But if you just used it as a 23 W and then you added the 5 plus 5, you get 33, which is pertaining to the Jesus. The Christ, sorry. Okay. And so going back now, if we just go back to the 15 again, that's the number of the devil in the tarot. And you think about Eve is the intermediary between the serpent and the tree of knowledge of evil. And you think about like her as the middle point between the darkness. Then it makes sense that her name would then equal 15 and refer to the devil in that capacity. Okay. Talking about that shit, I don't like gematria at all. Talking about this stuff actually fries my brain and makes me really tired. But we're talking about the union between night and day, the reconciliation, the fulcrum point. Just as the sun Horus represents the horizon, the fulcrum point, Eve is also symbolic of the fulcrum and therefore the bridge and middle pillar. Blah, blah, blah. We just spoke about all that. So the child, the Christ, is the central pillar that bridges the night and the day, the mother and the father, the chaos and the order, the blackness and the logos, the blindness and the illumination. Because if you think about like black soil, right, you can't see the seed under the earth in the soil can't see anything, so it's blind. That's where the growth needs to happen. Okay. So number 5 is embedded in the trident. We spoke about that. We spoke about W's. I'm not going to go through that again. You've got Poseidon and Neptune, Lord and husband of the earth, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The 5 plus 5 make the 10, and the 10, when you can join them, they make a symbol called the phi or phi, phi, pho, fum. It's just a circle with a line right in the middle, and it refers to the golden ratio, and it's a symbol of the 10 as well. The most conjoined way of representing 10 would be the phi symbol. The symbol of psi shows 3 points, blah blah. Okay, I mentioned here that the psi symbol looks like a dove descending. And you think about the dove or the bird. The bird's representing, the bird is the word. Bird is the word. And the number of the symbol is 31. And if you look at the actual symbol itself, it has the 3 points descending to 1, right? So that number 31 is like in gematria, Crowley and all that treats it as very important. And if you reverse it, it becomes 13, which is the number of death. And if you think about Christ or Jesus, he is the 13th element. He is the sun in the center. And emanating from the sun are the 12 divisions of time, the 12 months, the 12 signs, the 12 disciples, right? So from him is the zodiac. Well, he dies on the cross, and the cross is a symbol. The T is a symbol of time. So he's dying on the cross. He's dying. He's essentially reversing the process of time. He's killing time. Because the spirit itself is outside of time. Him becoming one with the spirit is him dying on the cross of time. Any idea of himself as he existed in time can no longer be carried forth as an embodied living soul, because what his self was before that in time was only a reflection. So because he's a living soul now with the Father, he's died to time. He's no longer in time because his self is alive, and life is the source of creation, not the reflection of it, right? So it's a whole symbol of the transcendence of time by dying on the cross. And the cross, which was time, is now also the sword, right? And the sword is the word. So he's become the word. By dying on the cross, he's become the word. He's become the sword itself. Okay. And this is just another quote. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thy eye be evil, or reflected reality, or reflected, perception, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? Okay, so we're talking about the same thing. It's the same story, same 3 elements. All right, just finalizing it now. So when the offspring of the sacred union has unified the dual eye into a single eye, it becomes the timeless ion or aeon, which is the new seed and new yoni of creation, and the word made flesh. The word comes into that reflected reality and brings life to it. It becomes the living word itself. And as the living word, this child speaks into creation. And what is his word, his magic word that he uses to speak into creation? And I mean, with the English, you got A, B, C, D, you're speaking abracadabra, right? A, B, C, D, abracadabra. Now, if you look at abracadabra, these first 4 letters here, they're from the Greek alphabet. So A, B, R, A is actually alpha, beta, gamma, delta. So this R and this triangle here, which are abra, are actually the Greek first 4 letters. So it's genius. Abracadabra, you've got the A, B, C, D of the English, but interlaced with that, you've got the A, B, C, D of the Greek. And that starts the process again. Easy as 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, you've got the 10. Okay. Now that 10 is that complete unified trinity. All right, and then what happens again? The game starts again. There's usually probably going to be a variation to the game. So if this game was A, B, C, D, it might be different next time. It might be A, B, like as Crowley says, it's the new words abrahadabra, right? So if you think about it, it's like abra, A, B, H, D. So instead of C being the Christ, it's going to be H being the Horus, or whatever. I don't know. For some reason, it's H now. In the new aeon, right? So we don't live in that reality. But that might be your new reality if you become the aeon, then you can speak the magic words. But I think it's all part of the learning process, fam. So that's it for me. I don't know how long that went for, but it was a long time. And I'm glad it was done. It's pretty sloppy. And I was pretty stoned earlier and spaced out, but I kind of like that. I kind of like that it was imperfect because I'm a perfectionist. And as long as it's out there, I can always refine it better. So thanks for, if you made it this far, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope this information is more than just information for you, and that you take what I've been talking about here and actually go and do what seems to be written about in these stories and myths. They want you. The system doesn't want you to be in darkness. The system wants you to reconnect, to find out who you are, and everything in the reality is a reflection of that. So if you're ready to give up your reflected I that's trapped in time and become connected to the living force of creation, you can study what's being talked about here and then go and do it. Close your damn eyes and go and meditate and do it, and then you won't need this information anymore. You will be it. So all the love in the world, and wish you the best of luck.